Hi, I'm Reynolds with Allie's Organics, and I want to show you how to grow hybrid tomatoes. It's basically the same way as you're growing everything else. You want some good soil. If you haven't amended your soil, then go ahead and amend it with plenty of compost and dig yourself a nice size hole, the same size as your pot, plus a little bit extra, just so that you can work in some fertilizer into here. Now, the type of fertilizer that I pick is an all-purpose. There's several other choices that you could use. You could use a bat guano that's high in phosphorus. You could use a fish bone meal that's high in phosphorus. But key is look for a number that's high. That's the second number that's high. That's your phosphorus. That's going to feed the tomato plant, the flowering, and the fruiting. So it's good to have the others, but make sure that your second number is the biggest. So I just want to put a couple of tablespoons in this hole and mix that around into the soil. Now, some other things that you can do, which I quite like, is to add a mycorrhiza. And this you need so little of. It's good bacteria. You're only going to need like a half of a teaspoon. Put it in that hole and work it around, because you don't want the fertilizer coming in direct contact with the tomato. That's why you work it into the soil that's already existing in there. Then you want to take this tomato about an hour before you plant too, is water it in with a kelp meal tea is what I like to do. The kelp meal just kind of helps with the shock, and then if you let it sit for an hour, it comes out of the pot a lot easier. Carefully take it out of its pot and take your soil and build up around it. And then you can cage this. This one is a and so it's the determinate variety, so it doesn't get very huge. So just simply put a cage over it. If you were doing an indeterminate variety, you would want something larger than this cage itself. You would probably want to put it on a trellis or a much larger cage to give it room to grow. Now, we don't need fertilizer for a little while, but I do like to fertilize about every 3 weeks. We can come back in 3 weeks and about 6 inches away from the root itself, just make kind of a little trench around it. And then just take some of your all-purpose fertilizer and just sprinkle a couple of tablespoons around this. I always use an organic fertilizer. It's slow release, and I just like to keep all of the living organisms feeding off of the organic fertilizer, where I don't like to use any kind of synthetic or chemical fertilizer. Cover that back up, water it in. You want to keep the soil moist, not soggy, but moist. Depending on where you live will depend on how much water it's going to need. Come out here and keep an eye on it. Watch for tomato worms or any funguses. If you see any dead leaves down in the bottom, you need to remove them, and don't let them stay on the ground. You want to remove them completely. Throw them in the trash, because you don't want to keep any kind of diseased parts around your tomato plant, because then you're introducing it into the soil. It's better to do a drip hose like this here, rather than overhead water your sprinklers. So there's just a few tips on how to grow a hybrid tomato.